breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warmer from Evo. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. As joining me in segment number 2 is Justin Perri, who does such great work over at Chalk Quality Bets. Don't let the name fool you, because he also is now doing the Justin Perri Show, where he's going to be talking a lot of baseball. He's now over at Pitcher List as well, and we're going to be discussing how he takes a look at baseball towards the early part of the season, how he tries to decipher everything, because we don't have the data points that we typically do have when we're in the middle of the season. Just some of the teams that he's a little bit bullish/bearish on coming into the season, and just the way to utilize splits when it comes to taking a look at this great game of baseball as well. So we're going to be chatting with him about that and so much more. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this baseball Sunday as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of baseball on Saturday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The Yankees have taken the first 3 from the Astros, 5-3 the final. Juan Soto gets his first home run as a New York Yankee off of Bryan Abreu, and just like the Yankees' first few wins, this was in comeback fashion as well. They were down by a count of 3-1 going into the 7th inning as the Astros had Hunter Brown on the mound. He didn't give a lot of length, but he was solid. 100 run given up in 4 innings as there were quite a few errors in this game. He was hurt by a Jose Abreu error, and for the Yankees, they had 3 different errors. So even though Marcus Stroman gave up 3 runs in 6 innings, all unearned, he actually looked relatively solid in this one. And then from there, you did have Ian Hamilton supply 2 scoreless innings, and Clay Holmes, he got his second save of the campaign with a scoreless inning. But Seth Martinez, Parker Molshinsky, they both do their part with a scoreless inning. But Bryan Abreu, he gives up 2 home runs. He gives up that home run to Mr. Soto, and then a little bit later on, Oswaldo Cabrera, who's right now hitting .538 through the first 3 games. He gets a second home run in the campaign, and Anthony Volpe was able to go deep off of Ryan Presley. His first for Presley, gives up that home run in an inning, and they did send out their Josh Hader. He was able to get a scoreless inning, but for the Astros, they also went 1 of 9 with men in scoring position, so a good start out there for the New York Yankees. Overs have been off to a good start in general, but this was a game that went under, much like what we saw on Friday. The Seattle Mariners walk it off against the Boston Red Sox in the 10th inning, and if you had the under in this game, you had to sweat out that 10th inning. 4-3 the final, as this was a game that in the first 9 innings was a mere 1-1 as Cutter Crawford, he delivered 1 unearned run given up in 6 innings. From there, Isaiah Campbell, throw in there Greg Weissert, Chris Martin, they're all able to supply a scoreless inning, but Oli Rodriguez, oh boy, he gave up 3 runs, 2 of which were earned, and then he was trying to have Justin Slayton try to hold on inherited runners. He was unable to do so as the Seattle Mariners walk it off with a single off the bat of Julio Rodriguez. For the Boston Red Sox, they also go 2 of 8 with men in scoring position as they were able to get to Trent Thornton in the 10th inning, who gives up 2 runs, 1 of which was earned while getting a pair of outs. Now the bullpen, Taylor Cicado, he got that final out to be able to get the win. Gabe Spire, Austin both supply a scoreless setting, and Logan Gilbert looked really good in this one. 7 innings, allows 1 run along the way. So that was an entertaining one, and this was another game that went under the total. Kansas City Royals right now have scored 2 runs in the first 2 games of the season. The Twins take them down by a count of 5-1. Joe Ryan allows 1 run in 5 1/3 innings, and then from there the bullpen went to work. Jorge Alcala, pair of outs out of the bullpen. Steven Okert, Brock Stewart, Griffin Jacks, they all supply a scoreless inning, and for the Minnesota Twins, they go 3 of 13 with men in scoring position as Seth Lugo delivered a really good start. 6 scoreless innings out of him. John Schreiber, scoreless inning, and then James MacArthur gives up a run in an inning, and talk about getting jiggy with it. Will Smith, 4 runs surrendered in his inning of work. As for the Royals, they had this game tied up 1-1 going into the 9th. They were actually up 1-0 going into the 8th, and then they made like your buddy at the bar and did not close. Looks like it's going to be a very long season for the LA Angels. They get pummeled by the Baltimore Orioles, 13-4 the final. Griffin Canning got canned for 5 runs over the course of 5 innings. Going deep off of him for the Orioles was Gunnar Henderson, his first home run of the season. Then Anthony Santander, he was able to get home run number 2 of the season. He goes deep off of Guillermo Zunguilla, who it's been a rough go of it for him. He gives up 3 runs in an inning. You had 4 runs, 3 of which were earned by Luis Garcia without getting a single out. His ERA is currently infinite. You had Adam Simber come into the game, give up a run in an inning. Jose Cicero scoreless inning, and the Angels' offense wasn't awful. Taylor Ward goes deep off of Grayson Rodriguez. First home run in the campaign for Rodriguez. He went out there and he gave up just that 1 run in 6 innings. He looked very solid. You did have Cionel Perez give up 2 runs without getting it out. Mike Baumann gives up a run while getting a scoreless inning before Jacob Webb, Danny Colum both lend a scoreless inning, but the Orioles just continuing to rake, and for the Angels, looks like it's going to be a long season for them. Might be a long season for the Metropolitans. They lose their 2nd straight game to the Brewers by a count of 7-6, and Luis Severino was one of the worst pitchers in all of baseball last year, good grief. Gives up 6 runs in 5 innings across 12 hits to a Brewers lineup that frankly is not very good. For the Milwaukee Brewers, you had Rhys Hoskins go deep off of him for his first home run in the campaign, but the Brewers were just able to play a bunch of small ball, and DL Hall, the main guy that the Brewers got in that deal for Corbin Burns, didn't look awful. He gave up 2 runs in 4 innings. I can't say it was great. He does give up a home run in this one to Francisco Alvarez, his first home run in the campaign, and then Obi Milner gives one up to Brett Baty, his first of the season, and Pete Alonso off of Abner Uribe. He was able to get home run number 1 in the campaign. Uribe gives up that home run in an inning. Milner, 2/3 of an inning, gives up that home run, and Bryce Wilson gave up 2 runs while getting just an out of the bullpen, but Elvis Piguero entered the building with 2 scoreless innings, and you had Trevor McGill supply a scoreless inning as well. For the Mets, the bullpen outside of Severino did solid. Adam Ottavino gives up a run in an inning, but Jake Diekman, Edwin Diaz, welcome back to him, both supply a scoreless inning, and Yohan Ramirez along with Ore Lopez, they combined for a scoreless inning as Ramirez, he threw at Rhys Hoskins after the questionable slide that he had a few days ago, and well, that got him tossed from the game. Good, clean family fun, and this is just good, clean family fun. The Atlanta Braves, they were such a good over team for you last season, and looks like we're going to be seeing much of the same this season. 12-4, they absolutely mollywop our good friends the Philadelphia Phillies, as I think it's very fair to question whether or not we need to be putting Aaron Nola on a little bit more blast. 7 runs surrendered in 4 1/3 innings. This was very rough, to say the least, as he allowed in this one a pair of home runs going deep for the Atlanta Braves. It was home run number 1 of the campaign for Matt Olson, and then Ozzy Albies, first home run of the season. Marcell Ozuna then goes deep off of Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Connor Brogdon gave one up to Michael Harris as well. For Brogdon gives up a run in an inning. You had Sir Anthony Dominguez give up 2 runs in his inning of work. Luis Ortiz gives up 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning, and then Junior Marte, Gregory Soto, they both provide a scoreless inning, but I've noticed that year in and year out, the Phillies bullpen just seems to really struggle in March/April. That's the case here. JT Realmuto does go deep off of Jesse Chavez, who he came in for 3 innings and allowed that solo home run. Max Fried did not have it on this day. He gives up 3 runs and goes just 2/3 of an inning. This was not what you wanted to see if you were the Atlanta Braves, but the bullpen from there was amazing. Dylan Lee, 2 scoreless innings. Tyler Madzik, 1 1/3 inning scoreless. Pierce Johnson along with Rossio Iglesias, they both supply a scoreless inning. So the Atlanta Braves had 8 1/3 innings from their bullpen, giving up just 1 run. So you'll certainly take that, and if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, you'll certainly take a 3-0 start. They are hot, 9-3. They take down the Miami Marlins as it was the debut of one Jared Jones, and it was a bit all over the place. The strikeouts were there, 10 punch-outs. He did allow 3 runs and 2 walks in 5 2/3 innings, but all in all, you'll certainly take that. You had Hunter Stratton along with Ryan Baruchi both get a pair of outs out of the bullpen before Jose Hernandez, David Benar. They supply a scoreless inning, and for the Pirates, no home runs, but they go 7 of 16 with men in scoring position, and Ryan Weathers, well, he tried to weathers the storm, giving up 3 runs in 4 innings, but Andrew Nardi, after he had a great year last year, 4 runs surrendered in an inning. Sixto Sanchez, he's back up at the big league level after he's been out of it for the last few seasons. 2 runs, 1 of which was earned. over the course of 2 innings. From there, you had Anthony Bender and Declan Cronin both provide a scoreless inning, but damage by then had been very much done, and the Marlins last year, they were 33-14 in one-run games. Well, it's hard to be able to pull out one-run games when you can't keep it within a run. The Washington Nationals, they are able to get the win in this one by a count of 7-6 over the Cincinnati Reds. By the way, dating back to the beginning part of last season, the Washington Nationals in Patrick Corbin's last 33 starts are 16-17. Doesn't sound amazing, but if you're getting big plus numbers like you typically get with Patrick Corbin, that's actually very, very profitable, and it wasn't due to Patrick Corbin's great pitching, I'll tell you that. 4 runs surrendered in 4 1/3 innings. He allowed a pair of home runs as Jameer Candelario and Luke Mully were both able to get a home run off of him, but the bullpen from there was able to stabilize things. Hunter Harvey does give up 2 runs in his inning of work, but Jordan Weems, Kyle Finnegan, they both supply a scoreless inning. Derek Law, 1 2/3 innings scoreless in for the Cincinnati Reds. You did have Hunter Green give a relatively okay start. He didn't give up any home runs, just got his pitch count elevated. He's a strikeout guy. He got 7 punch-outs in 4 2/3 innings, but had 4 walks along the way, giving up 2 runs. Alexis Diaz, who's been a very reliable closer, gives up 3 runs in a third of an inning. Lucas Sims, along with Fernando Cruz, they come in, they combine for 7 outs, so they both give up a run apiece, with Lucas Sims giving up a home run along the way. Going deep, Keibert Ruiz, his first home run in the campaign. You did have a scoreless inning in this one from one Justin Wilson, but in the 9th inning, you had Diaz blow up, and then Brent Suter had to try to get the pair of outs out of the bullpen to try to preserve the game, but no dice there. You had the Cleveland Guardians absolutely take it to the Oakland A's by a count of 12-3, and the Guardians were a very good under team for you last season. They played 57.2% of their games to the under, but this is an Oakland A's team that they don't have very good pitching, to say the least, and, well, JP Sears, he should have been shopping at Sears instead of pitching on the mound. He gave up 5 runs in 3 2/3 innings. Danny Jimenez, he gets 4 outs out of the bullpen scoreless. TJ McFarland was able to come in for an inning, gave up 2 runs. You had Michael Kelly give up a home run going deep for the Guardians. Stephen Kwan, who just doesn't hit home runs, he got his first home run of the campaign before Lucas Ursach. He goes for an inning scoreless, and why they have Mason Miller coming in the relief and not starting, I have no idea, but he gave up 2 runs in an inning. They should not have been throwing them in the 9th inning in that one. I am not sure what the Oakland A's are doing, but I know that the Cleveland Guardians are trying to prioritize pitching. This was not a good start for Tanner Bybee. He gives up 5 walks, 3 runs a total over the course of 4 innings, but how about the bullpen stepping up? Nick Sandlin was able to supply a scoreless inning. Tyler Beatty, journeyman, 2 scoreless innings, and Cade Smith, 2 scoreless innings in his MLB debut. How about our DK Network write-up picks? 3-1 to start the season. Had the over in Walker, Texas Rangers, and the Chicago Cubs, and the Rangers got that total all by themselves. 11-2 the final. We needed the runs in the 8th inning. We didn't quite need 6, but this was a spot where going into the 8th inning, the Rangers had been 1-11 with men in scoring position, but then they erupt. You had a trio of home runs in this one. Josh Young, he was able to get a home run for his first of the campaign. Jared Walsh, welcome to Texas after he was with the LA Angels. He gets his first of the campaign. That comes off the Professor Kyle Hendricks, and you had home run number 2 for Adolis Garcia, also off of Hendricks, who got lane base at 5 runs surrendered in 3 2/3 innings. A whole other home run given up by Ben Brown. It is MLB debut. Mr. Brown got 5 outs, and he gave up 6 runs, including that other home run. You had Jose Cuas give you 4 outs out of the bullpen scoreless. Yancy Almonte got an out of the bullpen, and Luke Little scoreless inning in for the Cubs. Lone form of offense in this one, Dansby Swanson gets his first home run of the season. That comes off of Cody Bradford, who, other than that home run, looked good, giving up 2 runs over the course of 5 innings. Josh Sabors, David Robertson, Kirby Yates, Brock Burke, they were all able to supply you with a scoreless inning, so a very good start out there for a Rangers team that they played right around about 55.5% of their games to the over last season as well. So something to watch out for, and you do want to be taking a look at these teams that they're able to cover the run line as a favorite. And for the Dodgers, that is a big reason why I take a lot of run lines with them. They went 72-66 on the run line as a favorite a season ago, so they're either going to win the game by multiple runs or they're going to lose outright. And on this day, on Saturday, they lost outright, 6-5. The Cardinals were able to get the win, and that was thanks to the Cardinals putting up a 5 spot in the 7th inning. For the Dodgers, they actually got a nice start here out of Yoshinobu Yamamoto. 5 scoreless innings out of him. From there, you have Danny Hudson provide a scoreless inning. Alex Vesia gets an out of the bullpen, but Joe Kelly. How many times on this podcast have I said that this guy is not trustworthy? 5 runs for which were given up in 2/3 of an inning. From there, you had to have the Hurt come in. Kyle Hurt. He comes in for 2 2/3 innings, allows an unearned run in the 10th before Evan Phillips gets it out of the bullpen. And for the LA Dodgers, Mookie Betts in the 9th inning forces extras. Home run off of Ryan Helsley. 4th home run season as the Dodgers go 7 of 19 with men in scoring position. Helsley gives up 2 runs in an inning as Lance Lynn, actually not a bad start here, 4 scoreless innings. From there, Matthew Liberatore gives up 2 runs in 2 innings. Jojo Romero came in for an inning. He gave up a run. Andrew Kittredge, scoreless inning. Giovanni Gallegos, scoreless 10th inning to be able to get the job done out there. And the Colorado Rockies, ladies and gentlemen, will not go winless. 9-4 the final. First 2 games of the season. They had trailed after every single inning, I believe, but the Rockies put up a 5 spot in the 5th inning as they were able to get a pair of home runs. Ezekiel Tovar, home run number 1, and same for Brenton Doyle as both of these guys were able to go deep in big-time spots. The first one comes off of Tommy Henry, who was not long for this game, giving up 5 runs over the course of 4 innings, and then the other bomb comes off of Bryce Jarvis, who gives up a home run, 2 runs in total over the course of 3 innings. Luis Frias, he gives up 2 runs in an inning, and Kyle Nelson, scoreless inning. And for the Arizona Diamondbacks, he did have a pair of home runs off of Austin Gomber and Eugenio Suarez. He gets his first as a Arizona Diamondback. And Lourdes Gurriel, 3 home runs in 3 games already, as Gomber did get Gombered up, going 4 2/3 innings, giving up 4 runs. But hey, credit to the bullpen. Peter Lambert, Nick Mears, Tyler Kinley, Justin Lawrence all provide a scoreless inning, and Jalen Beeks get it sent out on the bullpen scoreless as well. So yay verily to them, and yay verily to the Giants, just completely pulverizing the San Diego Padres. 9-6 the final, as this game was absolutely nutso insano. If you had the under in this game, I feel for you. This was a game that had a count of 3-1 going into the top of the 8th inning, and then the San Francisco Giants put up a 6 spot for the Padres in the 9th inning, put up a 5 spot in that 9th inning for the San Diego Padres. He got a pair of home runs as it was home run number 1 in a Padres uniform for Eguy Rosario, and then you also had home run number 1 for Graham Pauley. Both of these guys were pinch hitters coming into the game because it was a blowout for the San Francisco Giants. Those home runs were allowed by Camilo Duvall and Eric Miller. Miller gives up 3 runs in 1 1/3 innings. Duvall gives up the home run, 2 runs in total in 2/3 of an inning after Jordan Hicks, surprisingly good start. 5 scoreless innings. Rogers squared, Taylor and Tyler Rogers combined for 2 innings. You had 1 run given up between the 2 of them, and for the Giants, you had a pair of home runs as Jung-Ho Lee, his first home run at the big league level, that comes off of Tom Cosgrove, and then Michael Conforto gets his second, also off of Cosgrove, as Dylan Cease's debut with the San Diego Padres wasn't bad, but wasn't long. 3 runs, 2 of which were earned, given up in 4 2/3 innings, hurt by Fernando Tatis' fielding error, as he's already made 2 of those this year. You want to be watching that. Johnny Brito, 2 1/3 innings, scoreless out of the bullpen. That was actually a surprise. He has not been great, but Tom Cosgrove, he picked up the slack for the runs that Brito typically gives up, giving up 6 1/3 of an inning before Angel de los Santos came in for a pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless, and Stephen Kolek, he came in, he was able to give you a scoreless inning as well. A team that was surprisingly very good on the run line, by the way, last season, that would be the Detroit Tigers. When they were a favorite, they were 21-20 at being able to cover the -1.5. They do not do so on this day. They win against the Chicago White Sox, but it took 10 innings, 7-6 the final. Shelby Miller, the hero for the Tigers, he pitches scoreless 9th and 10th innings after Kenta Maeda just got banged around like a piñata. 6 runs surrendered in 3 1/3 innings, allowing a trio of home runs. Luis Robert went deep twice, first and second of the campaign, and I did not know that this player existed until now. Brandon Shawmake, he was able to get his first home run of the season for the Chicago White Sox. It's not like Mike Soroka did a whole heck of a lot better. He gives up 4 runs over the course of 5 innings, including a home run to Mark Canha. Yes, he can get his first home run as a Detroit Tiger. And then Riley Green a little bit later on off of Dominique Leone gets his first for Leone. He gives up 2 runs in 1/3 of an inning. You did have Tim Hill come in for a pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless. Jordan Leisure, the leisurely, got his first career scoreless inning. Steven Wilson, John Brebbia both supply a scoreless inning, but Davey Garcia in the 10th inning allows the unearned run from second base to score. So that is the way that the Detroit Tigers get the job done, and they get the outright win. And then we did see the Toronto Blue Jays take a loss against the Tampa Bay Rays. 5-1 the final. for the Jays, they go just 1 of 7 with men in scoring position as Yusei Kikuchi. He gives up 3 walks and a home run, 4 1/3 innings, allowing 3 runs in total as Randy Arozarena was able to get home run number 1 of the season, and Zach Little came up big. 6 scoreless innings, and I think he's in for a big year. The Tampa Bay Rays are just a factory of good pitching. You had Colin Pooch give up a run in 2/3 of an inning, but from there, Phil Maton and out of the bullpen, Jason Adam, Pete Fairbanks, they both supply a scoreless inning, and for the old Blue Jays, you had Trevor Richards come in for a scoreless inning along Tim Meza, but Genesis Cabrera, he allows a run in an inning. Meza actually did allow a run in his inning of work, and Yimi Garcia gives you a pair of outs out of the bullpen scoreless, so going to be very fascinating to see how they operate moving forward. And if you're taking a look at the trends that we're right now seeing in Major League Baseball, as I was alluding to before, very overwhelming thus far for the season. We have now seen 27 overs, 12 unders, and I believe we're at 1 push thus far. It's absolutely insane. The over is sitting at 69%. Very nice. And favorites on the money line, they have been able to do quite well for you as well. 25 and 15 on the money line are favorites. That's 62.5%. And I'll be tracking these trends all season long. That's what we're seeing in Major League Baseball right now. By the way, I have to throw this in there. Road teams thus far this season, straight up on the money line, 26 and 14. So it's been a good run for them, and hopefully we can have a good run of guests on this podcast all season. As coming up next, Justin Perri does great work over at Pitchers List. The Justin Perri Show list goes on and on. We're going to talk about some of the teams that he's bullish on, just the way that he handicaps baseball here in the early part of the season, and what he's all made out of the overwhelmingness of the early part of the season. That's up next right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man, as Justin Perri. He does such excellent work over at Chocolate Bets, but whenever he joins this show, I always tell you, don't let the name fool you. He does a great job on the baseball front, and you'll be hearing much more of that this year as he's doing some good work over at Pitchers List. Coupled with that, I know that he's now doing the Justin Perri Show, where he's going to be breaking down a lot of baseball, a little bit of NBA, along with, obviously, the sport that we all know and love of college basketball. But you're able to follow Justin on Twitter/X over at Justin Perri, the number 8. That is spelled Perri on the last name. And Justin, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, it is always an honor to be here. Thank you so much for giving a shout out to all the stuff I'm working on. It is always a lot of fun to, just be able to work in an industry where talking about sports is the job we have to do here today. It is just a great honor to be able to do that with you, and excited to dive into a little bit of baseball. Our first conversation on the diamond this year. Had a lot of fun with college basketball, of course, as we talk a few great Elite 8 games going down. But yeah, man, it's going to be a great baseball season. One of the longest seasons. You think college basketball feels like a long one. Wait till we have to grind from late March all the way to early November here in the MLB.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of fact, when it comes to college basketball, that starts up in November. That ends in very, very early April. It's about a 5-month season. And hey, the NFL is about a 5-month season. That starts in September, and let's call it what it is. Other than the Super Bowl wraps up in very late January as well. For baseball, it's a 162-game grind, and just how do you go about the early part of the season? Because I do think that with baseball, you can make a lot of money early on during the season, but you can lose a lot of money early on during the season. It depends upon sort of your reads, how you're anticipating things coming into the season, and just what do you utilize this time of year? Because obviously the data points that we're going to have when it gets to like June, July, August, they're just not there right now.
That's a great question, honestly. I think one of the tougher spots to be a seasonal data type of, handicapper. If you're very used to like diving into how guys have been doing recently, maybe some home away splits, I think what you end up having to do, for me at least, is kind of go with the eye test. Go with what you're seeing, dig into some last year's stats. Guys don't really... You're not going to find a player who all of a sudden is going to hit lefties well when he's never done it his whole life, right? So while there might not be a look at how each team is doing this season, you can still get a good sense by understanding rosters, by, looking at new additions, trying to get a sense of, okay, how are they going to do against a pitcher like this? I think that, leading into matchup-based handicapping is always going to be the way to go for me, whether it's basketball or baseball, which are my two main sports. It's really the only two sports I handicap. You want to really get into the weeds. Whether that's, now with what I do at Pitcher List, which gives me a lot of really great data on what a specific starter is like, which I love them as that type of database. Baseball Savant, another good resource in there. There's a lot of good ones. But between those two, you can start to understand not only how good, and FanGraphs. You're going to need some FanGraphs. But you can start to understand how good a pitcher is at delivering certain types of pitches to certain types of hitters. You can start to understand the shapes of their pitches, who hits those well, what teams hit those well. And, you don't have to go that deep. You can start off by saying, okay, like, how is this team against lefties that rely heavily on a fastball and rising action, or are they going to see the sweeper, or maybe he has a cutter? And historically, again, no hitters is all of a sudden going to become a revelation and change what they've been good at hitting. Teams are going to go through ups and downs. Guys are going to go through ups and downs. But in terms of getting educated takes on how these players play and who they might be, I don't hate looking at past seasons. I don't hate looking at last year. I mean, a case that jumps out, like fading Mikolas on the first day against the Dodgers, was like, what info do you have besides how he looked at the end of the season? Maybe some spring training data. If you use that, I tend to very lightly. But to say, guy's probably not great, facing the Dodgers, probably won't go well. I mean, again, is it sometimes that simple in terms of taking an educated guess, playing the right play, and having some sports betting know-how to understand how to use that type of take, or I guess lean or feel for the game and translate that into a betting play that gives you a good opportunity to profit long-term?
Yep, absolutely. I think that a lot of this time of year comes down to intuition. You do want to utilize some splits that we've been seeing as well, and I do think that that's what is so nice about baseball. Justin Perri does such great work over at Shot Quality Bets, the Justin Perri Show, Pitcher List, and so much more is joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And just how do you try to decipher splits this time of year? Because I do think that there is a little bit of value in taking a look at guys that have had their struggles in April, like something that I noticed, and that has been coming to the forefront the last few days. The Philadelphia Phillies bullpen just always seems to struggle in April. I have no idea how, I have no idea why, but they always seem to struggle in April. Certainly when you go up against the Atlanta Braves, that's not helping you out too much, but that has been the case here. How much you take a look at certain things like that? Because in a sport like college basketball, I don't want to be utilizing historical trends like that, but I think in baseball, when you've got sort of these pitcher versus hitter sort of data splits, what have you, I think that there's a little bit more value in the game of baseball rather than other sports with this sort of data.
For sure. I think you're, without a doubt, right. Matchups are different in baseball than in every other sport, in the sense that in basketball, football, hockey, you have a random chance to match up against another player. And yes, you might have an assignment, which leads to that chance being, heavily skewed towards facing one player who's guarding you, or the guy on the bench who's going to guard you and that player's sitting, and you have like a 3-level split between, guy 1 with a big chunk, guy 2 with a smaller chunk, and then whoever else you run into with the third chunk as a total. But in baseball, it is always pitcher versus batter. It is a different level, right? So those splits matter more. How a pitcher or a hitter does in a specific environment, whether it be against a specific type of hitter on the road, whatever you get your edge from, I think you can feel a little bit better about it in baseball than in the early season than you can in other spots, because that matchup-based handicapping methodology that you and I both use very heavily is a lot more encapsulated in the split that you get. And baseball very naturally fits that because the offense is produced from that unique matchup where every hitter faces the pitcher. That would be like if the center had to guard everyone in basketball. It just doesn't work like that. You'd want the players that do better against the centers and that specific center. Who, obviously I'm getting a little too hypothetical there, but the idea being, like, you have such a different structure of the game that you have to be able to understand the advantage that it gives you and why you can trust specific data types more in one sport versus the other. And this is that reason.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that that is one of the big things about baseball. You're able to take a look at these sort of splits. You're able to just gather that data and we're able to utilize it even early on during the season. We have a little bit of that. And just when it comes to what we've got this early part of the season, hope springs eternal for all these teams. Although I will say, if you're the LA Angels after those first two games, I don't know if you have any hope anymore. I mean, that's just rough, to say the least. The Oakland A's, I think that we know where they're heading, but just coming into the year, were there a few teams in particular that you looked at and you thought, hey, perhaps the market is a little bit down on this team, or perhaps the market is a little bit too high on this team, and there might be a little bit of value in fading them early on?
Yeah, I think for me, I do end up finding these, like future markets pretty tight. You can get them early for sure, but trying to play like late March, early April futures, the market has taken the value off the table. It's not, the lines makers are so good. It's that, we have a lot of data and that comes from a lot of sharp players. Over time it happens. So there was definitely some opportunities. I know some people are holding some very, very nice prices on teams like the Royals to win the divisions, 25 to 1s, 40 to 1. Pretty sure some people got crazy prices that are not available now. That seem crazy, but were very realistic. So I don't have anything that's like, obviously you need to go be playing this on the win total. No, nothing, no win totals really jumping out. I don't think anyone's too high or too low. If anything, great spot to sort of look to the next wave a little bit in terms of the first level of over or under reactions. And they're going to be overreactions. Every overreaction has an equal and opposite underreactions. Isaac Newton's third law of betting. But no, I think what you end up wanting to do with this is really look for teams to struggle out the gate, maybe drop that first series, maybe, the Rockies coming out of this, what is looking to be an abhorrent start on the road. Yeah, on the road against Arizona. And you get that type of reaction, Greg. And you and I, even who are sharp baseball minds, you see that. And it's very difficult to not, let the emotion almost get you a little bit like, oh, they stink. And like that type of feeling is usually not aligned with the truth of the matter, which is that they will win games. They are still a professional baseball team. They're not going to lose every game. They're not going to be an auto fade on the run line every game. There will come times where the price will get good enough where you want to be taking them. And that will go the same for other teams that lose in ugly fashion. Yeah, the Angels, it's not going to be pretty. Those teams on the road, I definitely understand staying away. The pitching staffs don't have it. The depth isn't there from the hitting. They're going to a good team. I mean, you're talking about the Angels getting Baltimore and the Rockies getting Arizona. Arizona, if we don't remember, dethroned some really good teams in an epic run just last season. Clearly have the bats to do some damage. And LA only lost by 1 run worse than the Phillies did. So let's, cut everybody a little bit of slack. It's the first weekend. I would definitely take a look at keeping an open mind towards teams early on, and maybe to the point where almost in a shot quality-esque way, you look a little deeper than just the final scores, just the wins and the losses more so. Because I think even just a little letter next to the result can have even more of an impact than the score. But look into the opportunities created, the chances these guys had. If they're line drive outs with 2 men on and 2 outs, an inch to the side, and that's an RBI and the rally keeps going. And you have to take that type of stuff into account a little bit. And I think this is a great spot to do it because there will be overreactions in the market. You will see people be like, and maybe this one's fair, but Atlanta looks amazing, right? And they're going to lose some games. It's going to happen, and there's going to become a time where the price in aggregate or on average becomes worth it to bet against some of these hot teams. I mean, if that wasn't the case, betting would not be difficult. So it has to be true. Because if you could just bet the hot favorites all year, I mean, people wouldn't be talking about how difficult baseball is very much, but it is not an easy sport. The dogs will win games when you least expect them to. So when the prices start getting good, don't be too afraid to take a cold team. It applies to every sport, truly.
Yeah, this is not a sport where the best teams win like 75+% of their games. This is not college football where Ohio State, you can pencil them in to win like all but 1 or 2 games or anything like that. The best teams in baseball are going to lose 55 plus games. The worst teams, sans maybe 1 or 2. We've gotten a little bit more extreme with that, but even the worst teams are going to win 60 plus games. So I think that that's very astutely pointed out by you. And the old saying of momentum is as good as the next day's starting pitcher, it very much does reign true. As joining me on the show, we've got Justin Perri, who does great work over at Pitchers List, joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And in terms of what we got for Sunday, how do you take a look at the board? Because I am noticing that in terms of the openers versus what we're getting right now, a lot of totals are jumping, and that's because we have been seeing a whole bunch of overs here to begin the season. And I can't necessarily say that they're wrong in bumping up these totals. They felt a little bit low coming into the season, but I do think that there might be a little bit of a buy point on some of these unders, and I do think that it could start on Sunday.
It definitely could start on Sunday. You know what happens on Sunday a lot, and I don't know if we'll see
Craziness.
Craziness happens. Players get pulled out of games halfway through. Guys get rest days. Guys have scheduled days off. Don't be super shocked if someone doesn't play a full 3-game series, especially some of the vets who maybe have been in spring training. I don't think it's going to be nearly the same as what we're going to be talking about in terms of, come July, August, in terms of rest days. But, yeah, Sunday's a getaway day, right? These games are all in the daytime. If you are new to baseball betting or you are just getting reacquainted, most, if not every game is 1 p.m. local time. That's how it works. You play at 1 p.m. local, you get on the road, you're going home, you're going to a new stadium. Most of these teams are not staying put because everybody needs to have an early season home opener. So like the road teams to start the season, majority of them, if not all of them, will be going home, and the home teams will be going on the road. So this is a very, very unique getaway day because you will see teams needing to get their home openers in. I haven't fully dissected what that's going to mean to me, but I know that it's unique. I don't know, especially saying that you could see a road team, maybe that's already won their series. These are 4-game series, a lot of them. So a little bit of a unique spot in that sense where you could see a lot of them go 2-2. But the B team from some of the road teams as they look to get their best bullpen team ready to go for the home opener, or maybe the opposite being true from the current home teams who are like, all right, let's use everybody now in front of the home crowd. We're going to go on the road. We're going to face a best effort from a team, on Monday night to start a new series, someone's home opener. Let's get a win right now. Let's get a win today. So I don't know. That series motivation is something that's super intriguing. It is definitely a part of the way that teams attack the game, right? They want to win the series. It's part of it. It trains everybody for the playoffs. Winning a series is you have to be able to do it. And you need to be able to defend, right? You need to be able to force a rubber game. It's all practice for hopefully winning it all. So series mentality is big. Winning a series, locking it in, getting that third win out of 4 games is big, especially when you're about to go on a road trip or start a road trip. I'm looking for home teams, I think. I'm definitely looking for full game. I'm not looking for first 5. I'm looking for the home teams to use their best bullpen guys they probably used in the first night or two, probably ready to go on night 4. So, yeah, give me those home teams to lock in a strong series, end it off right. The away teams getting ready for their own home openers. It's not going to be a blanket rule. It's not going to work 100%, but I think it's an interesting angle and at least something you want to consider because it's a unique scenario.
Yep, and a lot of guys wanting to make a good first impression. Michael King is going to be making his first start as a San Diego Padre. Actually made a little bit of a long relief appearance in that Seoul series about a week or so ago. Jack Flaherty versus Eric Fetty in that White Sox versus Tigers game. I think that one is so intriguing after Fetty absolutely lit the world on fire out there in South Korea. Is that going to be able to translate to the United States? Lots of great storylines for Sunday. Heck, Nick Martinez pitching for the Reds. That's one that I'm intrigued about. And Justin, I know that you're going to do an amazing job all season long taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball. You're over there at Pitcher List. You're over there at Chalk Quality Bets and so much more. So love the good people at home. Know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, I mean, look, the best way to get a hold of all my stuff is following me on the good old Twitter/X, where I post everything that I'm working on, any new content. It definitely goes through there. It's just the most straightforward way. So going to be doing a lot of great stuff for Pitcher List. Going to be working on some relief pitcher rankings, it's looking like, and probably some assorted fantasy baseball articles, player breakdowns, and then I'll have some others, betting content going on the side. And to tie it all together is really going to be the Justin Perri Show. A lot of great guests, baseball minds. We'll get it all on the road soon. It's going to be a great baseball season. Super excited for it. Hopefully my Yankees do well.
Absolutely. Yankees looking much better this year than they did last season. That's been very encouraging, to say the least. The acquisition of Juan Soto means that, hey, if Aaron Judge goes down with an injury, you still have a capable bat in the lineup, unlike many seasons ago. Alex Verdugo is a little bit under the radar as well, and a man who he is never under the radar because we all know that he always delivers the goods. That would be Justin. A big thanks to him for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this baseball Sunday as we catch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to get on Justin Perri. He does such great work over at Chalk While He Bets, but don't let the name fool you, as he does such a good job taking a look at the game of baseball, one that he's going to be talking about quite a bit on his own show, The Justin Perri Show. He does an amazing job on that front, and every single time he joins me, I feel like we get just a little bit smarter. So, big thanks to Justin for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this baseball Sunday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at Unit_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order, and this is actually very simple. We go with the National League games first, all in time order, then the American League games, all in time order, and then the Interleague games, and we've got one of them. That is going to be at the bottom, so that keeps things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. And how about if we get things started with 951, 952 on the card? It is the Atlanta Braves on the road facing off against the Philadelphia Phillies. Ranger Suarez is on the bump for the Phils. Chris Sale goes for the Bravos. The Atlanta Braves are between minus 128 to minus 135 favorites. Between plus 114 and plus 120 is your number on the Phils. 8.5 to 9 is the total. On the 8.5, overs between minus 115 to a minus 120. Unders between even a minus 105 on the 9. Under is minus 120 to minus 125. Overs between even and plus 105. And a semi-line at a plus 124 on the Phillies. If you're looking at the run line, you're only getting a plus 120 by laying the run and a half with the Atlanta Braves. If we can get this to where the run line is more around either a minus 135 on the Philadelphia Phillies for getting a run, and or we can get this money line to either minus 124 or plus 125 on the Phillies, that's where I'm looking. So right now, we are in a little bit more of wait and see mode. I do this as the openers come out, and typically the timelines that we see in Las Vegas, they are not up. So right now, a little bit of wait and see mode, but if we could get more of a Braves minus 123, minus 124, so down about 10 or so cents, that's the way I'd be looking here. With Chris Sale, he looked solid when he was actually out there on the field last season. If you take a look at the ERA and just the raw numbers, I don't think that really spoke to how well he actually pitched. He got some pretty bad luck, to say the least, and his swing and miss stuff, it was coming back to him. He was getting well north of 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. In my opinion, he looked relatively solid during the springtime as well, just was robbed by injuries in general, and he did give up some contact to where it was like a home run in like 8 or so ballparks, so he just so happened to be in the wrong ballpark on that day. Meanwhile, you've got a guy in Ranger Suarez that is very much a pitcher contact guy, does a good job of being able to mitigate hard contact last year. Gave up about 0.9 home runs per 9 innings, but he's not really going to give you a whole bunch of swings and misses. He did a better job of that last year with about 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings, but you also have to have in mind the fact that this Philadelphia Phillies bullpen, it just always starts out the year very, very rough. I have no idea how or why, but we saw Jose Alvarado get lit up on opening day. Junior Marte is someone that's got some upside, but he's pitched each out of the last 2 games along Connor Brogdon, so these Phillies arms, they've had to be used quite a bit with the fact that you had Aaron Nola not give you a great start yesterday. You've got to figure that Matt Straw might be a little bit of a long guy for this team. You could see a little bit of Spencer Turnbull, but I think that they're probably going to utilize him more in that number 5 starter role. And then for the Atlanta Braves, I actually do like what I'm seeing out of this bullpen. Pierce Johnson, since he came over, he has been able to put up a sub-1 ERA in an Atlanta Braves uniform. Now, you do want to note with the Atlanta Braves, they did have to burn through a lot of their bullpen yesterday as well. They got a whopping 2 outs out of Max Fried, and then from there, you had the bullpen go 8 1/3 innings, allowing 1 run. Jesse Chavez was a nice stopper for this team, but that means that Dylan Lee through 19 pitches might not be available in this game. Now, Rossi Iglesias, Lon Johnson, both of these guys through 13 pitches or fewer, and this is an Atlanta Braves lineup that, they led the big leagues in so many different categories last year. You've got Ronald Acuna Jr., the MVP award winner, is off to another nice start this season. Got a guy in Michael Harris who, in a lot of circumstances, he could legitimately be like a number 4, number 5 hitter for a lot of teams. He was able to supply 18 home runs, was able to give you about a 290 average last season. He's rock solid. Austin Riley has gotten off to a little bit of a rough start, but he did last year. You know that he's going to pick it up. Marcell Ozuna went deep yesterday. You just take a look, and there is no weak points with this lineup, and this is a good Phillies lineup as well. Now, you've got your question marks with Yohan Rojas. He's clearly out there for his glove, but past that, you do have a bunch of nice poppers. Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber. These are guys that are able to hit it out, but at the same time, these are guys that typically do start a little bit slower. You've got a guy, Nick Castellanos, who he's a relatively consistent player. I like what he brings to the table. Alec Boehm is a nice piece as well, but when it comes to Ranger Suarez, I do have my question marks there. I don't think we're going to see quite the scoring expose like we've seen here to begin the season, but that said, I did set my total at 8.8, mostly seeing 8.5s out there, and at the 8.5, I do like the over, and it all depends upon the juice with regards to money line / run line. I'm willing to lay up to a minus 124 with the Braves. If we could get to a plus 125 or higher, I'm going to be looking at the Phillies, so a little bit of wait and see mode on the initial openers with regards to the money line / run line, but that said, do like this 8.5 over. 953, 954 on the betting board. The Cincinnati Reds, yes, we are on to Cincinnati. They're on to playing goes to the Washington Nationals. Jake Irvin goes for the Nats, and Nick Martinez is on the bump for Cincinnati. 10.5 is the total, over and under, both at minus 110. With the Reds, you'll find them between minus 165 to minus 175, and between plus 143 and plus 155, your number on the Nationals. I'm going to be willing to go with the Nationals. I was willing to go with pretty much anything of a plus 140 or higher. Is Jake Irvin going to go out there, light the world on fire? No, but Jake Irvin was able to get better as the season went along. He's not the world's greatest swing and miss guy. He's only going to give you like 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, and he does need to mitigate the hard contact a little bit more, but you could see some very clear improvement as the season went along. From the beginning of the month of August through September, he gave up 3 runs or fewer in all but 2 out of his final 8 starts, so he was able to do a nice job there, and one of those starts came against the Atlanta Braves, which, yeah, you're just going to get lit up there, but I mean, for Jake Irvin, I feel like he's doing a good job of just becoming a little bit more of a professional in general. I felt like there was a little bit of a learning curve, does need to cut down on the walks a little bit, but I think that Nick Martinez, even though his ERA was far better last year at a 3.43, I think that both of these guys are somewhat cut from the same cloth. You've got a guy in Martinez who, he gives you more like 8.5 or so strikeouts per 9 innings, but he has a little bit of a walks issue. Did a solid job being able to mitigate hard contact. He only gave up 1 home run per 9 innings, and personally, I did feel like he deserved a little bit more of an opportunity to start when he got starts with the San Diego Padres 2 seasons ago during the 2022 season. He wasn't great, he wasn't terrible. He was sort of a guy that you could rely upon to give you 5 innings, give up 3 runs, and I think that that's going to be a lot of what he does in Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati very much a hitter's ballpark, but this is a Washington Nationals team that doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of power on the roster. You did have Keibert Ruiz go deep yesterday, and you've got a 20-plus home run hitter from last season in Lane Thomas. They did pick up Joey Gallo in the offseason, and even though Joey Gallo is able to give you 30-plus home runs, let's call it what it is, the strikeouts are very much going to mitigate that, and right now, Joey Gallo has as many hits as myself to begin the season. You need to get guys like C.J. Abrams, Eddie Rosario on base, and then for the Cincinnati Reds, I do think that there's a lot of upside with this lineup. Guys like Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand, I really like what they're able to bring to the table. Just all about consistency with Ellie De La Cruz. De La Cruz pitchers last season just did not hit for a great average towards the back half of the season. He's able to make all the amazing plays, doesn't necessarily make the routine plays. You got a guy like a Will Benson at the bottom of the fold that I like, and I do think that the Reds, they've got a better bullpen, but at the same time, you do have to have your question marks as to whether or not these guys are going to be able to stay healthy. They pick up Emilio Pagan, who's been up and down the last few seasons, TJ Antone, Lucas Sims. These are guys I like, but for the Washington Nationals, I think it is so big that they got Tanner Rainey back in the fold, who a few seasons ago was pretty rock solid. They don't necessarily have a bunch of guys that light the world on fire, but Kyle Finnegan, Jordan Weems, these are guys that are able to give you some okay innings. They bring over Derek Law, ironically enough, from the Cincinnati Reds, where last year he had about a 3.60 ERA. So I do think that both of these pitchers are going to be able to hold down the fort. I recognize that Cincinnati is a little bit of a hitter's haven, but neither of these teams necessarily have ideal power. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. So my total at a 9.6. I like the under, and being able to get north of plus 140, I'm taking the Nationals on the money line. 955, 956 on the betting board. The Miami Marlins are going to be playing us to the Pittsburgh Pirates. As walking the plank for the Buccos is Bailey Falter, and Trevor Rogers is on the bump for Miami. Miami does find themselves as the favorite of between minus 120 and minus 125, and between plus 105 and plus 112. Your number on Pittsburgh, 8 to 8.5 is the total on the 8. Overs between minus 115 to a minus 120. Unders between even to minus 105 on the 8.5. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105, and I set my total at 8.7. I'm going to be looking at the over. Trevor Rogers a few seasons ago was actually really good for the Miami Marlins, and then it just all went straight down the toilet bowl from there. And for Bailey Falter, well, he's been quite incredible at being able to live up to that name. And for Falter, I actually do like the command from. He only gives up about 2 walks per 9 innings. He's going to be able to give you something if he could just find a way to be able to get guys a little bit more off balance. It feels like guys are able to anticipate exactly what he throws. And when he got to Pittsburgh, because he began his season last year over with the Philadelphia Phillies, he just really didn't get that tick up that you were hoping for. He had a 5.13 ERA with the Philadelphia Phillies. That was a 5.58 while he was over there with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And when he got acquired from the Pittsburgh Pirates, well, the Ding Dongs, they really started to go out on him as he gave up a grand total of, I believe, 11 home runs, 2 home runs per 9 innings when he was with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So not great to say the least. He is backed up, though, by a bullpen that, in my opinion, is pretty solid for the Pittsburgh Pirates. You've got David Bednar, Aroldis Chapman. I know that they dealt with some injuries towards the beginning part of the season, but these guys are solid. Jose Hernandez is able to give you some good innings. Ryan Baruchi is a little bit under the radar. I've always liked his overall game. I know that he spent quite a bit of time with the Blue Jays, and last year he had a 2.45 ERA, so you're actually set up for some success over there. While the Miami Marlins, they were experimenting with a few guys. They acquired like David Roberts at the trade deadline last season. Now they're going to be looking to more Tanner Scott, Uskar Brazoba, and Anthony Bender, a bullpen that, in my opinion, it's solid but not great. I like George Soriano, what he's able to bring to the table for this team as well, so we shall see what we're able to get out of them moving forward. The big thing for the Miami Marlins is, can this team hit? As right now they're staring at having as many home runs as myself through the first 2 games, and I think that they're going to score more than 0 home runs this season, but that said, Jake Burger is pretty much your main power bat. He was able to give the team between his stop with the White Sox and the Miami Marlins north of 25 home runs last season. Then guys like Brian De La Cruz, Josh Bell, they've got okay power, but it's not necessarily amazing power. For Luis Arias, he was so good at being able to get on base a season ago. 1 hit in his first 14 at-bats this far this season. You got to feel like he's going to pick it up a little bit, but we did see him in the second half of the season start to falter a little bit. You're going to be looking at guys like AC Sanchez needing to step up, and I do have my question marks there. Meanwhile, with the Pittsburgh Pirates, it's a lineup that I feel like might be a little bit all or nothing towards the middle part of the season. They've been able to put up 6+ runs here in the first 3 games of the season, so that has been incredible. You've got Oneil Cruz along with Brian Reynolds, who do a nice job of both hitting for average and power. Been very impressed by that. But the question is, can Henry Davis, the former number 1 overall pick, find it this year, or is it maybe a year too early for him to really be able to be an impact player for the team? Brian Hayes does a solid job moving the line, doesn't necessarily have ideal power, but someone that is able to get on base along with Ed Oliveira, so I do like what they bring to the table. And Ronnie Tellez was never necessarily amazing with the Blue Jays or the Brewers, but he's got some relatively solid power. This is just a situation, though, where I can't trust in Bailey Falter, and for Trevor Rogers, he just had a very small sample size last year. He made 4 starts, was shut down after the month of April. If you go back to what he was able to do a few seasons ago, this guy was very dominant with a 2.64 ERA in that 2021 season, was just all over the place in 2022. Big thing is, can he be able to mitigate the walks? That was really what was costly for him in that rough 2022 season. His walks per 9 rate was hovering right in the neighborhood about 4. He was actually worse at home than he was on the road. I do think that he's going to be able to iron out a little bit on that front. He does a solid job, be able to get swings and misses, and I do think that he's going to be able to keep the Pirates a little bit offline, and I do have my question marks with both of the guys on the bump in this one, and the Pirates, they have been the real deal thus far on offense. I did set my total at 8.7, looking at the over. I think with the pitching advantage, the Marlins are going to be able to salvage this series, set them as a minus 127 favorite, so looking at the fish on the money line and the over, 957, 958 on the betting board. It is the New York Mets, and they play us to the Milwaukee Brewers. Colin Ray says zip it hooray to a start for the Brewers, and Tyler McGill is on the bump for the Mets, and the Metropolitans are a favorite between minus 130 to minus 142, between plus 115 to plus 125. Your number on the crew. Total on this game is 8. Over and under between minus 105 to 8 minus 115, and I did set my total at 8.3. I'm going to be looking at the over. Colin Ray actually pitched slightly better on the road than at home last season. We'll notice this with quite a few Brewers pitchers. I still remember when Corbin Burns was with the Brewers, he always pitched better away from home rather than at home, but Colin Ray gives up a lot of hard contact. He gave up about 1.8 home runs per 9 innings last season. Not a high swing and miss guy. He's only going to get you about 8 punch outs per 9 innings, while giving up about 2.6, 2.7 walks per 9 innings. And for Tyler McGill, this guy is very much a good home pitcher, and he is a rough pitcher on the road. Overall, it was, shall we say, rough last season, as he did post up a 4.70 ERA overall. But, I mean, with Tyler McGill, I do think that there's a little bit of upside with him. His strikeout numbers last year were way down. He only got about 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. You could tell that he was dealing with injury, and that was very much costly for him. But when he was pitching over in Citi Field, he was solid. 3.19 ERA, 7-3 record, giving up less than a home run per 9 innings. When he got on the road, he gave up darn near 2 home runs per 9 innings with a 6.79 ERA. And he's backed up by a bullpen for the New York Mets that it's not great, it's not bad. Drew Smith is relatively okay. Adam Ottavino is able to be presentable. And now you've got Edwin Diaz back to the fold. They did utilize him for an inning yesterday, but heck, even Jake Diekman, he got a new lease on life when he went over to the Tampa Bay Rays last season after completely sinking it up with the Chicago White Sox. And for the Brewers, even without Devin Williams, this is a relatively solid bullpen. You are able to rely upon guys like Elvis Figueroa, Joel Payamps, Abner Uribe. These are guys that are very good, but I do think that you're going to have Colin Ray do quite a bit of damage that the Brewers aren't going to be able to recover from. And for the Brewers, even though they've won their first 2 games, I do have my question marks with the lineup. They had 16 hits yesterday. I attribute that to Luis Severino being absolute trash and really not much else. And I do like the game of William Contreras. At the catcher spot, he's one of the better hitting catchers up there in the big leagues. Rhys Hoskins, he had his first home run since 2022 yesterday. He had 30 bombs when he was fully healthy about 2 seasons ago. I do think that that's going to be a relatively solid pickup for this team moving forward. And then on top of that, you do have a few guys with upside that are a little bit younger, but you're going to need to have Christian Yelich just continue to fire on all cylinders, because banking on guys like Bryce Terang, Blake Perkins, Jackson Chourio, you do have your question marks there. Flip side for the New York Mets, are you going to be able to get some of these veterans to return back to form? Like when he's at his peak, you've noticed someone like a Jeff McNeil being able to do a solid job moving the line. Harrison Bader, when he's at full force, he's had some ability to be able to get on base, provide a little bit of power. Starling Marte had a home run to begin the season on opening day. He's someone that's able to move the line, and obviously Pete Alonso is Pete Alonso, one of the best home run hitters that you're going to find in all of baseball. But that said, it is a Mets team that you've got your question marks in terms of what you're going to be able to get out of this lineup moving forward. It's a Mets team that I do think that the pitching is going to be there for them, but I do think that they're going to be able to get to Colin Ray in this spot. I just am not very bullish on him in general. I do think that that'll allow the Mets to be able to get one of these games in this series. So as a result, I did set the Mets at a minus 130 on the money line. Currently, like I said, we were seeing between minus 130 to a minus 140 at that low water mark of minus 130. That's the max I'm willing to lay on the Mets. Would like to see it come down just a little bit more, but would be willing to lay that minus 130, and did set my total at 8.3. Also going to be looking at the over. 959, 960 on the betting board. It is the Arizona Diamondbacks. They play us the Colorado Rockies. Ryan Feltner is on the bump for the Rockies, and old Brandon Pfaadt is on the bump for Arizona. Arizona between minus 188 to minus 205 favorites. Between plus 170 and plus 175, your number on Colorado, 9.5 is the total. Under is minus 120, and the over is even. And this is a circumstance where I set the Diamondbacks minus 188 on the money line. But if you're looking at the run line, laying a run and a half with the Diamondbacks, find that more around minus 102 to minus 105. I see much more of an edge on the run line. I was willing to go up to a minus 108, so I'm going to be willing to take the Arizona Diamondbacks on the run line. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, they have led in this series for like all but 1 or 2 innings. I mean, it's just been absolutely ridiculous what we've seen on the Arizona Diamondbacks. So this is a Colorado Rockies team that it took them 20 innings into the season to not be trailing at the end of an inning. Like, that's how bad it is right now for the Colorado Rockies. As for the Arizona Diamondbacks, you've got a pretty solid lineup. I'm not going to call it amazing or anything like that, but Christian Walker, someone that supplied 30-plus home runs last season, Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel, they've got functional power, they move the line, and Corbin Carroll, I don't think that he's quite at the level where he's going to be an MVP candidate, but I mean, this is a young 23-year-old that is one of the best and brightest stars in all baseball. We saw him steal bases, hit for power, hit for average last season, then you're able to throw in their guys like Eugenio Suarez to be able to give you a little bit more power. And for the Colorado Rockies, this team is always just one of the lightest hitting teams in all of baseball when they're away from home. Good news is they haven't had to deal with elevation shifts quite yet, but they made a massive overpay with Chris Bryant, who has been a big giant flopperoonie. Brendan Rodgers is right now hitting cleanup for the team. Like, that should tell you where the Colorado Rockies are in terms of power. I actually really like Nolan Jones. He was able to give you 20 home runs. He hits for a relatively solid average, but it doesn't matter if they're facing righties or lefties. It doesn't matter home or road. This is a Rockies team that, just if you look at weighted runs created, they're one of the worst teams in all of baseball. You know that things are bad when you've got guys like Eliurius Montero and Brenton Doyle in the starting lineup. And for the Colorado Rockies, it's not like you've got a very good bullpen either. Brent Suter was good in the bullpen last season. Problem is they don't have Brent Suter anymore, which means that Tyler Kinley and Justin Lawrence are your most trustworthy bullpen pieces. You're looking at someone like a Victor Vodnik as being a guy that's going to be put into high leverage situations. That's not what you want to see. Now, Ryan Feltner was actually a very good feel-good story towards back half of last season. He took that comebacker off of his head. He was able to return late, and then he did have one start where he had 5 scoreless innings against the Padres before his last start of the season got lit up by the LA Dodgers. But I just don't see a lot of upside with Ryan Feltner. They've tried him at the big league level a few times. The swing and miss stuff is okay. He gives you about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he has just always lacked command. In his time at the big league level, he gives out well north of 3 walks per 9 innings, gives up quite a bit of hard contact. He's struggled at home. He has struggled on the road. I think that the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to get to him. And for Brandon Pfaadt, he had a really rough go of it towards the beginning part of 2023, but was able to pick it up late. We saw what he was able to do in the postseason when he was brought up the second time from the minor leagues, because the first go-around he had north of a 6 ERA. He was just getting absolutely destroyed. Second go-around, it was more like a sub-3.6 ERA. He was doing a much better job in terms of his location command, and I do think that he's going to be able to put it together this season, and being able to go up against the Colorado Rockies, that never hurts either. So this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to trust in the Arizona Diamondbacks on the run line. I'd be willing to go up to about a minus 108 there, and in terms of this total, I did set mine at an 8.6. I do think that the Diamondbacks going to be able to get to Mr. Feltner, but I do think that for the Arizona Diamondbacks, they're going to be able to hold this game down, and I don't think that they're going to need a ton of their bullpen in this one, but the bullpen pieces that they do have, Scott McGough, I think is in for a little bit of a better year. I do think that you're going to be able to get some relatively solid innings out of Joe Mantiply, though he has had his struggles in recent years. If he can find that form that he had in 2022, that'd be absolutely massive, but I do think that the Diamondbacks bullpen, it's relatively average. I do think that it's going to be able to hold up just enough for an under in this spot, so I do like the under, and I do like the Arizona Diamondbacks laying a run and a half. 961, 962 on the betting board. It is the San Francisco Giants. They are on the road facing off against the San Diego Padres. The King, Michael King, is on the bump for the Padres, and for the San Francisco Giants, it is undecided, which is why this game in a lot of places is off the board. I'm seeing initial openers of the Padres being between about minus 132 and minus 135, plus 115 to plus 120, your number on the Giants, and total is 8.5, under is minus 120, and the over is even. Was announced after the game yesterday that it will be Dalton Jeffries who gets the start for the San Francisco Giants, and if we get this sort of a number, I'm going to be willing to lay it. I did set the Jeffries versus King matchup where I'm willing to lay up to a minus 157 with the Padres, and maybe a total of 7.9, so at an 8 or higher, I'd be taking a look at the under. Dalton Jeffries was pitching for the Oakland A's a few seasons ago and was never a high strikeout guy, 6.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. He did actually impress during the springtime, but That said, it was a very small sample size. He's coming off of his second Tommy John surgery as about a 28-year-old guy, and I just have never really seen it from him. I remember he was a fade a few seasons ago when he was with the Giants. Now, he's got much better help with regards to the coaching, but he's backed up by a good bullpen. You've got Rogers Squared and Taylor Rogers that both do a relatively solid job. Now, the thing that this team is starting Jordan Hicks right now, that's not necessarily too tremendous, and Ryan Walker, you have to figure, is going to be one of these long guys / a guy that might have a opener utilized for him as well. So you do have your question marks there. The overall pitching depth is an issue, but if you're able to get to Camilo Udval, that's someone that is a very good closer for the team as well. And for Michael King, talk about a guy that was able to light the world on fire towards back half of the season last year. When he was pitching for the New York Yankees in a starter's role, he was putting up a sub-3 ERA. He really put it together. Now, you may notice he's already pitched this season. He came in long relief in that Seoul series against the LA Dodgers. I just don't make too much out of that because he had to get thrown into the fire very, very late and everything like that. But between his starts and his long relief appearances last year, Michael King gave up north of 3 runs once. That was his final start of the regular season. This guy was very rock solid in terms of being able to get you quite a few strikeouts 8 seasons ago. His strikeouts per 9 rate during the 2023 campaign, that was hovering right in the neighborhood of about 11.5 or so. I do think that we're going to see a little bit of a fall off this year, but really like his overall stuff. And for the Padres, you've got some very fearsome bats in the lineup. You've got Fernando Tatis Jr., you've got Manny Machado, a pair of guys that are able to go deep, pair of guys that hit for a relatively solid average. You've now got Luis Campusano, who gives the catcher spot just a little bit of validity because they were utilizing guys like Gary Sanchez last season. That was very far from ideal. Now you're able to get an actual catcher that you're able to bank on to be able to give you good at-bats out there. Xander Bogaerts, I think that he's going to be able to return to a little bit of prominence after last season. It's not like it was a terrible year, but at the same time, he was, I think, about a 285 with 19 home runs. You just expect a little bit more there, and then you just take a look at the overall depth for the team. Ha-Seong Kim is someone that just does a little bit of everything out there in the field, being able to move the line. And for the San Francisco Giants, they did have Matt Chapman have that multi-home run game 2 nights ago, but that said, I still do have my question marks in terms of this lineup. You've got a whole is greater than some of its parts sort of lineup, as they did pick up Jorge Soler. That should be able to give the team some nice thumping power moving forward. Last season when he was with the Miami Marlins, he was able to belt out 25 plus home runs, but guys like Michael Conforto, Thairo Estrada, you have in the fold like Patrick Bailey, Mike Yastrzemski. These are all guys that they give you about 15 to 20 home runs. You don't have necessarily a lot of upside, but you have a high floor with a lot of these gentlemen. Jung-Ho Lee, he's trying to make the transition over from the KBO. So far, so good, but you do have your question marks there, and I do think that for the San Francisco Giants, they're going to be a little bit outgunned in the spot. I do think that Michael King is going to be able to continue to pick up where he was a season ago in terms of his start. So this is a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at the under. If we do get these 8.5, set my total at a 7.9, considering it's going to be Jeffries. Between the minus 132 and the minus 135 that I'm seeing, would be willing to lay with the Padres. Made my handicap a minus 157. 963, 964 on the betting board. The St. Louis Cardinals, they're on the road. They're facing off against the LA Dodgers, as we got old Gavin Stone on the bump for the Dodgers, and Steven Matz goes for St. Louis. Total on this game is 9, over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. Between minus 170 to minus 180 is your number on the Dodgers, and plus 150 to plus 157, your number on St. Louis. Run line of the Dodgers, you're able to get that more in the pocket of about a plus 110 to a plus 115, and this is a circumstance where I'm actually going to be willing to ride with the St. Louis Cardinals. I needed at least a plus 155 to be able to take a shot, but I'm going to be willing to roll with it just because you got a guy in Gavin Stone that when he got brought up to the big league level last season, it was just all sorts of rough for him, to say the least. And for Gavin Stone, he looked a little bit better during the spring, but I do think that even though he's going to be a relatively good pitcher in 2 to 3 years, that doesn't mean that he's going to be a good pitcher in this spot. And for Gavin Stone, it's just all about locating with him, as he gave up north of 3 walks per 9 innings his first time around. Now, he legitimately got unlucky when he was up at the big league level last season. He gave up 8 home runs in 31 innings. It felt like it was a little bit of a matter of bad circumstance, but left himself way too exposed at the front of the dish. And you got a St. Louis Cardinals team that they didn't show at night number 1, but the team has quite a bit of power, and I do think that this is going to be one of the better offenses in all baseball. You got Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, 2 guys that you're able to pencil in for north of 275 average and 25 plus home runs. That's a great place to be able to start. Brendan Donovan, he does have his home and road splits with regards to being able to move the line, get on base, and Mason Wynn is someone that just when he was up at the big league level last year, he wasn't able to put it all together. I think he's going to be incredible moving forward. I just don't know if that year is going to be this year for him. But you've got Wilson Contreras, who had a really nice end of the season last season behind the dish. You've got Nolan Gorman, who doesn't hit for a lot of average, but he's able to give you a lot of power. The problem that this Cardinals team has, though, is the bullpen. You've got Andrew Kittredge, who comes over from the Tampa Bay Rays. That helps, but the only returning player from last season that really had a sub-3.5 ERA, that'd be Ryan Helsley, and he was out for half the season last year. You're relying upon guys like Andre Palante, Ryan Tepera, Giovanni Gallegos in the bullpen. That's an issue, and they do go up against an LA Dodgers bullpen that is one of the best out there in the big leagues. Last season, they were a top 5 team in terms of bullpen ERA. I've got to love what I'm seeing out of Danny Hudson along with Ryan Brazier, two guys that have a new lease on life. And for Brazier, since he came over to LA, he's got a sub-1.5 ERA. Evan Phillips has been very dominant in the back half of games as well. But again, I've got my question marks with Stone. Meanwhile, for Steven Matz, he got off to an awful start last season. But if you take a look at what Steven Matz did after the All-Star break last year, it's like he became a different pitcher. They demoted him down to the bullpen for a little bit of time, and then when he resurfaced as a starter in his final 5 starts prior to him getting hurt, he had given up 2 runs or fewer in every one of them. As a matter of fact, in those final 5 starts, he gave up a whopping 4 runs. He looked really good. He was able to locate relatively well. The walks were down. He was able to just mitigate hard contact in general. I do think that there might be a little bit of upside moving forward with our good friend in Steven Matz. This is a circumstance where I did set the Dodgers at a minus 154, so getting plus 155 minimum buy point here on St. Louis, but it is my buy point, and I do think that both of these teams going to be able to put up plenty of runs. I've got my question marks with this Cardinals bullpen, and I've got question marks with Gavin Stone. So did set my total 9.4. I like the over, and with a plus 155 or higher, going to be looking at the Cardinals. 965, 966 on the betting board. It is the Baltimore Orioles. They play us to the LA Angels. Reed Detmers is on the bump for the Halos, and Tyler Wells hopes to pitch. Wells for Baltimore, and Baltimore is a favorite of any between minus 155 to minus 162, between plus 135 and plus 140 your number on Los Angeles. 8.5 to 9 is the total. On the 9, under is minus 120. The over is even. On the 8.5, the over is minus 125. The under is plus 105, and I set the Orioles minus 162 on the money line, but if you're looking at the run line, you're getting right around about a plus 125. I'm seeing a plus 126 out there as well, and I was willing to take anything of a plus 115 or higher. For Tyler Wells, he's really been able to lock in as an MLB starter. He had a little bit of a rough go of it a few seasons ago, but for Tyler Wells, a season ago, he was able to get his swing and miss numbers up quite a bit. He was up to about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. The one trepidation that you do have, he gave up a lot of hard contact last year, darn near 2 home runs per 9 innings, but he was able to do a nice job of being able to keep them to solo shots because his overall command is solid. He only gives up about 2.6, 2.7 walks per 9 innings, and for Reed Detmers, you want to talk about a guy that got pretty unlucky last season, that'd be Detmers, as he had north of 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. Yes, the walks were a little bit high. You'd like to see him come down from the about 3.5 or so walks per 9 innings, but that said, it just felt like it was a matter of bad circumstance for him every single time he took the mound. He has been very much not supported by the fielding of this team. As a matter of fact, his fielding independent was more around a 4.13. His ERA was a 4.48, so he very much suffered there. Opponents hit 3.18 on balls in play against him, too. So, I mean, there was just a lot of things that were going against him, and now you've got a lineup that is trying to back up our good friend Mr. Detmers that, frankly, outside of Mike Trout, it's not very good. Mike Trout gonna be able to give you 30 home runs if he stays healthy. That's a big giant if, because that has not happened in quite some time, but you look outside that, Taylor Ward has a little bit of upside. I still remember a few seasons ago when he was able to have a nice 22 home run season last year, provide about a 335 on base. He's a pretty solid professional hitter, but you're relying upon Zach Neto, Miguel Sano, Joe Adell, guys like this that you got your big time question marks with. Miguel Sano, don't you know this guy has just not been good in recent years. This guy does not do anything to move the line whatsoever. He's at a 223 or less each out of the last 3 years. Like last season, he had one more home run than myself. I don't know what was happening with Miguel Sano. It was a combination of like personal stuff, injury, and just a whole bunch of what you may do, but that was not too terrific to say the least. And then the Angels bullpen, it's just a big giant pile of stink. You've got Luis Garcia, who had one nice season for the San Diego Padres, and then last season he was able to pick it up towards back half of the season, but he was just a little bit wobbly in general, so I do have my question marks with him. And then you're able to throw in there the fact that you're going to be needing to rely upon bounce back Diamondbacks from Jose Cicero, Adam Simber. Both of these guys were very much down last season. Jose Soriano is someone that I don't really trust in. And Matt Moore was very good last season. I don't know if he's going to maintain that this year. And for the Baltimore Orioles, even with having Felix Bautista on the shelf, you saw Junior Cano was able to lock down games. Craig Kimbrell, always a roll of the dice. You don't want to be trusting in him too much, but you got Danny Colum, Cionel Perez. Guys like this are able to give you good solid innings, and Dylan Tate being back after he had a good year 2 years ago, missed all of last season. I think that there is quite a bit of upside when it comes to the guys in the back half for the Baltimore Orioles. So this is a circumstance where I do like Wells and the Orioles. I am going to be willing to take the run line. I was willing to take anything of a plus 115 or higher with that Orioles run line, and did set my total at an 8.4. So seeing the 8.5 to 9 out there, I do like the under. I think that Reed Detmers gives you a relatively solid effort, and I do like the Orioles to win this game by multiple runs. So taking the run line and the under, 967, 968 on the betting board. It is the Toronto Blue Jays. They throw their facing off against the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays have to be decided going for them, and Kevin Gausman gets a start for the Blue Jays. I'm seeing an initial opener of the Rays at a minus 115, and I can tell you right now, if the Rays are the favorite, I'm going to be all over the Blue Jays, as I have this sort of mapped out as it being Tyler Alexander and really bullpen pieces for the Tampa Bay Rays. And in that circumstance, I set the Blue Jays at a minus 142, so we'll be willing to lay up to a minus 141 with them, plus 143 or higher by point on the Rays, and did set my total at 7.7. 7.5 or less, we'll be looking at the over, 8 or higher to the under. Kevin Gausman was dealing with some injuries towards spring training that did cause his start to the season to be altered by a few days, because you'd think that Kevin Gausman would be that opening day starter, but he was able to avoid the injured list, which is something that is very big because they are going to need him out there. This is a Blue Jays team that is dealing with a pair of injuries in the bullpen, and Eric Swanson, Jordan Romano, so you need all the starting pitching that you can possibly get, as he was dealing with like shoulder fatigue, and it felt like he was able to do a solid job in that final start prior to the start of the season. So I think that he should be all good to go there, and this is a Blue Jays lineup that is very much thumping. You've got George Springer, who's already hit a pair of home runs thus far this season. Flagger Jr., after last season, he gave the team 25 plus home runs, gave the team north of a 330 on base. For most guys, that's a relatively solid season. He, unfortunately, has very, very high standards, though, and for his standards, that was a little bit of a down season, but you've got Bo Bichette. I think that he's going to be able to put together a very nice year in his own right. You've got Justin Turner down for what, who comes in from the Boston Red Sox as well, so lots of upside with so many of these bats. Meanwhile, you've got a Tampa Bay Rays team that he just do a nice job of finding a way to be able to move the line, being able to get on base. Harold Ramirez was one of the best at being able to do so last season. He was able to hit right in that pocket of about a 313 with a 353 on base. A lot of these guys have functional power. Like Harold Ramirez is not going to light the world on fire and is going to give you like 30 plus home runs, but he's able to give you like 15 to 20. Andy Diaz, he's got functional power as well, does a solid job being able to reach base. Randy Arozarena is the same way, and Arozarena, I feel like, could have a little bit of bust out with regards to his power numbers. He's been between 20 and 23 home runs each of the last 3 seasons. Hits both righties and lefties relatively well, and the Rays platooning splits are relatively solid as well. I like the fact that they bring in Jared Calabreo as well. This is someone that does a very solid job being able to find a way to just reach base in general. Now, the catcher spot with Rene Pinto being your main guy, that's a little bit of an issue, but the Rays are just able to manufacture bullpen pitching left and right. Gotta love what you're able to get out of Phil Maton, a guy that they pick up from the Houston Astros. He was someone that a few seasons ago was a big part of that title run for them, as he was able to post up a 3 ERA last season, so he should be a nice piece for the team. You've got Turner Armstrong, Jason Adams, Pete Fairbanks, all guys that will supply a sub 3.3 ERA in that bullpen. And for the Jays, even though they already dealing with a few injuries in the bullpen, you still have some guys I like. Tim Meza was one of the more underrated bullpen pieces in all baseball last year. Yimi Garcia had his ups and downs a season ago, but I do think that this could be a little bit of a bounce back. I was thinking we might get Bowden Francis in this game, and he could be utilized as a long guy if needed, but overall, I do think that the Blue Jays could be able to get a good start out of Kevin Gausman, so this is a circumstance where I am going to be willing to set them as a pretty sizable favorite. I set the Blue Jays at a minus 142, so one to lay up to minus 141 with them, plus 143 or higher. Looking at the Rays, and then 7.5 or less, looking at the over 8 or higher, the under 969. 970 on the betting board. It is the Kansas City Royals. They are playing us to the Minnesota Twins. Bailey Ober is on the bump for the Twins, and Brady Singer. The hopes have the Twins singing the blues as he goes for the Royals, and the Royals are a slight underdog, anywhere between plus 105 to minus 108, anywhere between minus 114 to minus 120. Your number on Minnesota, 8.5 is the total. Unders between minus 110 to a minus 115. The over is anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 110, and I did make the Twins a favorite of minus 114, so we're going to be seeing if we can get a little bit of movement here, but that said, I'm seeing a minus 114 out there. We've seen a few minus 112s as well at some point, and that would be my buy point on the Minnesota Twins. I'm willing to go up to about a minus 114 here with Minnesota. For Bailey Ober, he does a very solid job in terms of just making sure guys don't get on cheaply. His career walks per 9 rate hovers right in the neighborhood about 2. The big question is he going to be able to continue to mitigate hard contact? He did a very solid job towards the front half of the season last year, but you could tell that he was getting a little bit lucky on balls in play. Second half of the season, it wasn't necessarily quite there. He's done a good job of being able to get some relatively solid swings and misses. His strikeouts per 9 rate last season was hovering in the neighborhood about 9, so that's something that you do like to see, but he's got a career about 395 fielding independent to a 363 ERA, so there is a little bit of concern there. And for Brady Singer, he was the exact opposite. He had a really rough year to the year last year, and it was just a case where he was getting really stinking unlucky. For Brady Singer, he's always done a solid job of being able to just not put guys on overly cheaply over the last 2 seasons. Towards the beginning part of his career, he had a little bit of an issue with that. That was down to about 2.8 walks per 9 innings last year, and if you want to look for a little bit of bounce back candidate, I do think that Singer is at 5.52 ERA overall last season, but a 4.29 fielding independent. When you've got a fielding independent that's more than a full point lower than your actual ERA, that's something that really does speak to me, and that's something where you want to be sort of starring that, being like, all right, this is someone that I think could be able to bust out and could be able to have a relatively good run of things, and he was a little bit better towards the back half of the season last year. If you take a look at his last 16 starts, the team went 8-8 in them. Once again, 4.81 ERA, not necessarily ideal, but had just a 4.07 fielding independent as well, so I do think that he is going to be able to do a much better job moving forward, and I do think that things are going to iron out for him a little bit. Now, the question becomes, what sort of a bullpen is going to be backing up our good friend in Brady Singer, as they're going to be looking at James McArthur for good innings, and that's not necessarily a place where you want to be. We're just going to call it what it is. I know that Anel Zerpa is probably going to be utilized as a little bit of a long guy. It just really doesn't compare to what you've got for the Minnesota Twins. Yohan Duran, I believe, is one of the most underrated closers they're going to find in the big leagues. Cody Funderburk, Dan Duarte, these are guys that provided a sub 365 ERA. They bring in Steven Okert, so they're relatively solid there. And for the Kansas City Royals, been a rough start to the season for the offense. They combined 2 runs in the first 3 games, and you can tell that the talent is there. Bobby Witt Jr. was able to put together a nice season towards the back half of it last season. Hunter Renfroe, he's been rough here in the first 2 games of the season, but he's able to give you a little bit of thumping power. But can Vinny Pasquantino, who looked very good towards the beginning part of last season, but got banged up, can he be able to return a little bit to form? Can you get something out of Kyle Isabel? Can Salvador Perez refine that form when he had darn near 50 home runs a few seasons ago? And for the Minnesota Twins, it's all about health with this team, as right now they're dealing with an injury to Royce Lewis, who, he is incredible when he's out there, but man, that guy needs to be put into bubble wrap. Same with Byron Buxton, very nice day on Saturday, but how long is he going to be able to stay healthy? You've got a guy like an Eduardo Julian, who's able to hit for some relatively solid average. He's able to get on base. Carlos Correa looks to be having a little bit of a bounce back season as well. Had a little bit of a rough go of it yesterday, 2 days ago. He was pretty good though. Carlos Santana is someone that's able to give you some power. It feels like the Twins are going with sort of like the on-base power sort of ideology, and I do agree with that, and I do think that for the Minnesota Twins, they're going to be able to provide Ober with a little bit more support, though. I do like what Brady Singer is going to be able to do moving forward as well. Like I said, at a minus 114 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay with the Minnesota Twins, and I did set my total at 8.4. I think that both of these starters have some relatively good upside, so I'm looking at the 8.5 under, and at a minus 114 or less, willing to lay it with the Twins. 971, 972 on the betting board. The Houston Astros are going to be playing us the New York Yankees. Clark Schmidt goes for the Yankees, and JP France is on the bump for Houston. Houston is not in France, but they are finding themselves as a favorite between minus 115 to a minus 125, and between plus 112 to plus 105 your number on the Yankees. 9.5 is the total. Over and under, both at minus 110. I did set the Yankees at a minus 132. I'm going to be looking at them on the money line. I actually think that both of these starters have some relatively good upside. For JP France, he pitched above his skis a little bit last year. If you take a look at the numbers that he was able to put up, it was very strange, to say the least, as he was not a strikeout guy last season. He was getting about 6.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, 3 walks per 9, but yet he posted up a 3.83 ERA. Fielding independent was more around a 4.66, but even though it was a little bit of a truncated spring, he looked much better better with his swing and miss stuff during the spring. Now, the command was a little bit all over the place. I don't know if he was just trying to emphasize just being able to get a few more strikeouts, trying to be a little bit more explosive with a fastball, but it seemed to be the approach that he took in a little bit of a truncated spring from. And for JP France, he did pitch much differently when he was on the road rather than at home. He was actually significantly better when he was on the road rather than at home, with this being a ballpark that I would say it's relatively okay for pitchers, unless if you're dealing with the Crawford boxes. Overall, I do think that he's going to be able to bounce back a little bit more there. And for Clark Schmidt, I actually liked what I saw from him in spring training. He was one of those guys that really busted out. He gave up 1 home run in 17 innings during spring, and the stuff in general just looked much better. He was able to get about 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings last season. I would not be surprised at all if he's able to see a little bit of a nice bump there. And for Clark Schmidt, I felt like he got a little bit unlucky last year. And a 4.64 ERA, fielding independent was 4.42, and I felt like it deserved to be even better than that for the Yankees. They have been able to fortify this lineup a little bit more. Now you've got Juan Soto in the fold, who's just a professional hitter in general. Even if he's not giving you a whole bunch of extra base hits, he'll find a way to be able to draw a walk. He'll find a way to be able to move the line. That's something that the Yankees just struggled with so badly last year, because they relied upon Aaron Judge to do absolutely everything, and Aaron Judge just continues to be amazing in general. You know that he's good for home runs. As long as he stays healthy, he's one of the best hitters in all of baseball, but what are you going to be able to get around him? Well, now you bring in Alex Verdugo. Alex Verdugo's not going to go out there and light the world on fire or anything, but I like his overall game. Also got Gleyber Torres back from last season when he was one of the few guys that was able to do a solid job moving the line. We shall see what Anthony Rizzo is able to do after he had a really nice year when he was traded to the New York Yankees, and then the concussion was just all out of sorts last year. It's off to a little bit of a rough start this year. And then on the Houston Astros side of things, typically Alex Bregman gives you a little bit of a slow start. So far, not too bad for him, but in his very small sample size with Jose Abreu, he was terrible at the beginning part of the season last year. Right now, looking pretty terrible to begin this year, but Yenier Diaz, along with Victor Caratini, really do elevate the catcher spot from a hitting sort of perspective. Yordan Alvarez, we all know what to expect out of him. One of the best players at being able to provide both power and on-base percentage. Jose Altuve at the top is relatively solid as well. With the Astros, they just don't strike out at all. They always put the ball in play. They do a solid job of making the most out of their at-bats as well. So I do think that that's going to take it out of Clark Schmidt a little bit. But I do like the overall upside to Schmidt. I do like the upside of France as well. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game. Semi-total at 8.8. Looking at the under, I do think that the Astros, a little bit more of a complete team, even though I do think that both of these bullpens going to be solid, and I do give a little bit of an edge to the Yankees' overall bullpen, but when you've got Josh Hader in the 9th inning, that really does elevate things. Rafael Montero, that's a bit of an issue, but you've got Ryan Presley, you've got Brian Abreu. If you're able to get to that 7th inning, you're in good shape there. Meanwhile, with the Yankees, guys like Jonathan Loaizaga, I know that Tommy Kahnle is right now dealing with a little bit of an injury, but you still have even someone like a Caleb Ferguson that comes in from the LA Dodgers. These are really good bullpen pieces, so do like the under in the spot, and willing to lay up to a minus 131 with the Astros. 973, 974 is going to be the DK Network write-up pick. This is the Detroit Tigers on the road facing off against the Chicago White Sox. Eric Fetty Wap is on the bump for the White Sox, and Captain Jack Flaherty goes for the Tigers. Both guys in their debut find themselves with a total of 8.5. Over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. With the White Sox between plus 135 to plus 140 is your number on them. Between minus 150 to minus 162 is your price on Detroit. I did set this at a plus 137. Being able to get what we're getting right now with the White Sox, right around about a plus 140 is a high watermark. I'd be willing to take that 140, but my write-up here is actually going to be on the under. Semi-total at some point. Eric Fetty was absolutely amazing out there in South Korea last year. He pitched for the NC Dinos, one of the best mascots that you're going to find in just any form of baseball. And for Fetty, he went from being awful in 2022 at the major league level. 5.81 ERA, 4.1 walks to just 6.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, giving up a home run and a half per 9. In South Korea last year, he posted up an ERA of 2, 10.5 strikeouts and 1.7 walks per 9 innings. And when it came to spring training, certainly he didn't post up a 2 ERA, but he still looked solid. 3.86 ERA, he was giving up 1 home run in 14 innings, and Jack Flaherty looks to be a little bit more the Jack Flaherty of old after he was awful last year. It got so bad after he was traded to the Baltimore Orioles that he was relegated to the bullpen, but when we saw Jack Flaherty a few seasons ago, that 2019 season, he was a fringe Cy Young candidate then. In 2021, before going down with an injury, he was lucky to have the 3.22 ERA and a 9.2 record, but still, he was doing a solid solid job there, and it does feel like that swing and miss stuff is starting to come back to him. He last year had about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. This is a big-time upside piece for a Detroit Tigers team that they still don't have a ton of offense. The Tigers, they were better in the back half of the season last year than they were at the beginning part of the season with their offense, and they do sign Mark Canha. Yes, he can elevate this team. He's already been able to provide 3 hits in his first 2 games, but still, when you've got guys like Kerry Carpenter, Parker Meadows, Zach McKinstry manning your outfield, you've got your question marks there. Spencer Torkelson was able to put it together towards the back half of the season last year, and it's off to a really nice start. I do think that he's starting to find it after being the number 1, I believe, overall pick a few seasons ago, but Javi Baez has been a big giant waste of money. The catcher spot in general is brutal for this team. And then on the flip side, you've got a White Sox team that last year they were second worst in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. Only the Oakland A's had fewer runs per game. I like Luis Robert. He's already got a pair of home runs. He's tremendous for the team. Eloy Jimenez, he's able to hit for a relatively solid average. He's able to give you some home runs as well. But here's the issue for the White Sox. They had the lowest walk rate of any team in the big leagues last season. And they're once again just deciding, you know what, we're not going to take our base. I believe that they have gotten 4 walks in the first 2 games. These guys have absolutely no plate discipline whatsoever. While Yohan Moncada has quite a bit of talent, he's not willing to take a pitch. Andrew Vaughn is like the only guy on this roster that's willing to draw a walk. Dominic Fletcher, Paul DeYoung, these are upside guys, but I don't know what they're going to provide you. The catcher spot is an automatic out for the team. Now, the roll of the dice that you've got with regards to this under is this White Sox bullpen. It is bad. They bring in John Brebbia. That should be able to elevate this team a little bit, but not like John Brebbia is necessarily going to be really taking you to the promised land at about a 4 ERA when he was with the San Francisco Giants a season ago. They've relegated Michael Kopech to being back in the bullpen. Dominic Leone has been all over the place the last few seasons. Steven Wilson, can't really trust in him, but I mean, it's a Tigers bullpen that last year was about 17th in the league. In terms of bullpen ERA, you don't have that one just lights out closer or anything like that, but these guys like Jason Foley, Andrew Chafin, Will Vest, they're guys that give you like a sub 3.5 ERA. Alex Lang is relatively okay. So I do actually think that these teams are going to be able to hold down the fort. I think Eric Fetty is going to come back from South Korea and give a good start. I think Jack Flaherty is going to be back in form. And with these 2 teams last year being in the bottom 5 in terms of runs per game, I think they get a low scoring slog. My DK Alvarado pick is on the under, semi-total at 7.8. And with the Tigers, made them a minus 137 favorite. So here at a 138 plus. Wanted to take the money line with the White Sox along the write-up of the under. 975, 976 on the betting board. The Oakland AAA's playoffs to the Cleveland Guardians. Carlos Cookie Carrasco is on the bump for the Guardians, and Paul Blackburn walks the plank for Oakland. Oakland is an underdog of plus 105 to plus 110. And between minus 115 to minus 125 is your number on Cleveland. 8 to 8.5 is the total. On the 8, the over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. On the 8.5, under is minus 120. And the over is even. And with the Guardians, I set them at a minus 124. I'm going to be willing to roll with them on the money line. For Carlos Carrasco, was a just absolutely awful year with the New York Mets last season. He posted up an ERA that was well north of a 5.5. He wasn't healthy all season long, and that was just a bad fit in general. Those 2 years with the New York Mets, he just could not get anything going whatsoever. Actually, 3 years with the New York Mets, just could not get anything going whatsoever. His last year in Cleveland, that was that truncated 2020 season, had a sub-3 ERA. I don't think that he's ever going to return to that sort of form, as his swing and miss stuff just is not there from where it was a few seasons ago, but I think the big key is just being able to hone in on the command. He gave up 3.8 walks and 1.8 home runs per 9 innings a season ago, and good way to be able to get your confidence going up against the Oakland A's, a very pitcher-friendly ballpark now. Does play a little bit different during the afternoon rather than during the nighttime. Nighttime, the marine layer is out and causes a lot of balls that would typically fly out to die at the warning track, and for the A's, J.D. Davis actually off to a relatively solid start. Pair of home runs, looking to show that form that he had a few seasons ago with the San Francisco Giants, but just take a look up and down the boulevard at this team. They were last in the league in terms of runs per game. Brent Rooker's off to a little bit of a rough start. He's really your main guy in terms of being able to move the line, get on base. Ryan Noda doesn't have the world's worst on base percentage, but not a guy that's really going to hit for average. Last year, hit about a 229 with a 364 on base. You were able to get a few home runs out of Shea Langoliers, and Zach Galoff is someone I think has a little bit of upside along JJ Bleday, but I need to see it to believe it out of them. It's an A's team that in general just does not have that thumping power outside Davis, and for the A's, bullpen, it's still relatively rough. They did elevate a little bit. Danny Jimenez is someone that I think can actually be a relatively solid closer in this league. TJ McFarland has had his moments of brightness recently. Last season, though, with the Mets, it was relatively rough. And really, the last 2 seasons after he had that nice 2021 season with a 2.56 ERA with the Cardinals, just has not been good, to say the least. Mitch Spence is someone that you're relying upon. And for the Guardians, even if Carlos Carrasco doesn't have a good start, you know that the bullpen is going to have his back. You've got James Karinchak, Emmanuel Clase that do a nice job in the back half of games. Scott Barlow is a relatively solid reliever for this bunch as well that they picked up in the offseason. Tim Herron is someone I think has quite a bit of upside, as well as they're giving him many more opportunities after last season. He was rough, no doubt about it, but I think that he's going to be able to turn the corner this season. And for the Cleveland Guardians, this is one of the worst teams at being able to provide power in general. They were able to put up a nice 12 spot yesterday, but that said, it wasn't really due to the deep ball. You've got someone in Jose Ramirez who's able to provide some home run power, and Stephen Kwan went deep yesterday. That's going to be one of like 5 home runs that he hits this season, but Kwan is able to move the line. He hits north of 275. Andres Jimenez 2 seasons ago hit darn near a 300. Now the question becomes, what are you going to be able to get out of the catcher spot? As right now they've got Austin Hedges there. He's not necessarily too amazing. Gabriel Arias leaves a lot to be desired at the third base spot. Down at the bottom of the fold, Brian Rocchio. He's a guy that does a good job in the field, but his bat leaves a lot to be desired as well. I do think that you're going to be looking at some low-scoring slugs for both of these teams moving forward. And for Paul Blackburn, he was really able to hone it in last season as well. For Paul Blackburn, he's one of those guys that, once again, he's got some pretty solid home and road splits, and he's just been all over the place in his entire career. He began his career not being a swing and miss guy whatsoever. First few seasons, he was only getting like 5.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. That elevated to about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings last year, and he kept the hard contact down. He gave up just 1 home run per 9 innings last year. Now, he had been doing a much better job with regards to command. Last 2 seasons was providing about 2.4 walks per 9 innings. That did hike up to more like 3.6 to 3.7 walks per 9 innings a season ago, but being able to pitch out there in Oakland, I think is going to be his friend. When he was at home last season, he had a 3.57 ERA compared to a 5.33 ERA in a road setting. So I do take a look at this spot. I do think that it's going to be a lower scoring game, and I do think that you're going to see Carlos Carrasco feel a little bit more at home here with the Cleveland Guardians. I set my total at 8.1. I like the under. And with the Guardians, just with the back half of the bullpen, I think that they get the job done. Willing to lay up to a minus 123 with the Guardians. 977, 978 on the betting board. The Seattle Mariners play with the Boston Red Sox. Garrett Whitlock goes for Boston, and Bryce Miller is on the bump for Seattle. Seattle is a favorite between minus 145 to minus 155. Between plus 130 and plus 135, your number on Boston. 7.5 is the total. Over is between minus 110 to a minus 120. Under is between even a minus 110. I did set my total at 8.2. I'm going to be looking at the over. Garrett Whitlock, to me, just doesn't feel like a starter. Has always been a really good long reliever for the Boston Red Sox, but every single time they try him as a starter, it just doesn't seem to go very well. I wish I could put it any other way, but there are just some guys that are destined for the bullpen and that are very good in the bullpen, and there are just some guys that we try them as starters and it doesn't pan out. I look at the much maligned Jordan Hicks, and I think that that's going to be the case for him out there in the National League as well, but you take a look at what Whitlock has been able to do throughout his career. When he comes out of the bullpen, he's a very dominant force. He's not a guy that's going to get you a whole bunch of swings and misses or anything like that, but in his career as a reliever, this is all years, 2.65 ERA, his strikeouts per 9 rate when he's coming out of the bullpen, that's darn near 10. Meanwhile, as a starter, that dips down to about 8.4, and he's got a 4.76 career ERA as a starter, and as a starter, gives up about 1.5 home runs per 9 innings, less than 1 home run per 9 innings coming out of the pen. Going up against someone in Bryce Miller that does a really good job in terms of command. Last year, in terms of walks per 9 rate, he was hovering right around 2, but he gives up quite a bit of hard contact as well in that pocket, about 1.3 home runs per 9 innings surrendered out of him, and it was a case where it just felt like he got a little bit figured out towards the back half of the season. His front half of the season was absolutely incredible, but he gave up 3+ runs in 5 out of his last 7 starts of the regular season. I think that he was dealing with a few ailments in general, but being able to play in one of the best pitchers ballparks out there in Seattle, I think that that's going to be his friend, and let's call it what it is. The Seattle Mariners just back him up with a better bullpen. For the Boston Red Sox, Kenley Jansen is always someone that you never feel too secure about in the closer's role. You've got Isaiah Campbell, who comes over from Seattle. I like his game, along with Chris Martin. Chris Martin, a lot of people forget, he was actually really good out of the bullpen last season for Boston. He was able to hang in ERA of like a 105. It was incredible incredible. But that said, you're relying upon someone like a Greg Weiser to be able to give you good innings. Josh Winkowski has become a little bit more of a long guy. And for Seattle, they just find a way to be sort of like the West Coast version of the Tampa Bay Rays. They take a whole bunch of guys and they make them into really good relievers. Like Taylor Sacato has been a really nice reclamation project along with Gabe Spire for them. They bring in Cody Bolton. I'm thinking that he's going to have a big year for this team. Andres Munoz is someone that's terrific. Now, they are without Matt Brash right now. That's a little bit of an issue, but I do like the way that the Mariners were able to fortify their lineup in the offseason as well. I expect a little bit of a bounce back from Ty France after it was a bit of a rough go of it last season. Ore Polanco is someone that comes in from Minnesota, was banged up last season, but when he was out there on the field, provided about a 335 on base. He's got some pop in the bat. Julio Rodriguez has perennially been a little bit of a slow starter, but I think that he's going to be able to get off to a little bit of a better start this season. You've got Cal Raleigh, big dumper, who's able to give you power, but not necessarily a whole lot of average. And then Mitch Haniger. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. That's the best way to put it with him. Meanwhile, for the Red Sox, I like the pickup of Tyler O'Neill. Guy with power. He has been a little bit inconsistent throughout his career, but that was a nice upside pickup from them. Christian Casas in the back half of the season last year, second half of the year, he was providing well north of 400 base. Jaron Duran is someone that was able to hit for a really good average last season, has been able to come along as a fielder as well. He was able to supply about a 345 on base, but with the Boston Red Sox as well, this is a team that had some of the biggest home and road splits they were able to find in all of baseball with regards to their offense. Rafael Devers was one of the main constants for the team, and what are you going to be able to get out of Trevor Story? Trevor Story was terrible last season, and it looks like he's going to pick up where he left off 8 seasons ago. Masataka Yoshida, not a lot of power there, but he consistently, home and road, does get on base, so that's something that you're able to feel encouraged about. But I do think that Bryce Miller, after he had a little bit of a rough go of it towards back half last season, this being his first full year actually being up at the big league level to begin the year, I do think that he's going to be able to elevate, and I do think that he's going to have his issues, but I just don't feel like Garrett Whitlock is a starting caliber pitcher. So I did set my line more around a minus 153. If you're looking at the run line of the Seattle Mariners, you're getting that between about a plus 135 to a plus 145. I was willing to take a plus 138 or higher. I'm going to lay that run half, take the plus 145 run line that I'm seeing at circa, and also going to be going with the over set my total at 8.2, and we wrap things up with 979, 980 on the betting board. It is the Chicago Cubs, and they are on the road. They're facing off against the old Walker, Texas Rangers, as 55 Shades of John Gray goes for the Rangers, and Mr. Wicks, Jordan Wicks, is on the bump for the Cubs, and the Cubs are anywhere between plus 115 to plus 122 underdogs. Between minus 125 to minus 135 is your number on Texas. 9.5 is the total. Under is minus 120, and the over is even. And with the Rangers, I did set them at a minus 136. I'm going to be willing to roll with them on the money line for John Gray. He had a really nice start to the year last year. You could tell that it got a little bit wobbly, and he was a bit banged up, and frankly, he was a little bit lucky last year. He had a 4.12 ERA. Fielding independent was quite a bit higher, as his swing and miss stuff last season just wasn't what it was in past years. He was down to about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. He was issuing more walks per 9 innings than he has in the past as well, so that does leave a little bit of something to be desired, but did a solid job being able to keep the ball in the yard, and he goes up against a young man in Jordan Wicks that he got a nice little bit of a sample size of the big league level last season with 7 starts, and looked relatively solid. He did give up 4 home runs in 34 and 2/3 innings, but he gave up less than 3 walks per 9 innings, did a nice job keeping things out in front of him. Not necessarily a high swing and miss guy, but if you look at his minor league levels, I think that he's got more deception than he showed at the big league level last season, and he's backed up by a Cubs lineup that is solid at moving the line. They're not an incredible power team. You're going to have a lot of guys when it comes to the end of the season, like Christopher Morel, Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson, guys like this, that they're probably going to end up with like 20 to 25 home runs. Cody Bellinger, I think, can be a little bit better than that. Bellinger, after a little bit of a rough start last season, so I do think it calls into question, was last year a little bit of a flash in the pan, or is he back for good? I sort of think that's somewhere in the middle of A and B, but this is a Cubs lineup that last year, they were 6th in the big leagues in terms of runs per game. They did so against righties and lefties, but got a Texas Rangers team that led the big leagues in terms of runs per game at home last season, led the American League in terms of home runs per game at home last season, and Adolis Garcia, he's already got a pair of home runs thus far. He has been absolutely incredible. You've got Josh Young, who is having himself a nice start to the season this year after he busted out as a rookie. There's a lot of people talking about Wyatt Langford being perhaps a MVP candidate for Rookie of the Year, probably MVP candidate a little bit further down the line. That might be going a little bit far this season, but Corey Seager, he's been able to do just an amazing job with the bat. He might be your MVP candidate. Like, this guy does an amazing job finding going on base, hit north of 325 last year, has good power. When he's able to stay healthy, he's one of the most fearsome guys in the big leagues. Big thing that you have to call into question with the Rangers is the bullpen. They were 24th in the league last year in terms of bullpen ERA, but you pick up David Robertson, you pick up Kirby Yates, that helps fortify things. Josh Jaboris is someone that's relatively solid. They have really figured out something with Jose Leclerc as well. It does feel like this is a much better bullpen than it has been in past years, and for the Chicago Cubs, they were about a middle-of-the-road bullpen last year, and they didn't necessarily get the start that they were looking for. Professor Kyle Hendricks yesterday, so they had to burn through a lot of guys, and I like Jose Cuas. He had a relatively solid middle part of the year last year. Edbert Alzolay has turned into a relatively solid reliever for the team as well, but guys like Luke Little, someone like we saw yesterday, and Ben Brown, what are you going to be able to get out of these guys? Julian Merriweather actually does a really good job with his strand rate, being able to keep guys on base, but that said, this Cubs bullpen, it does have a few question marks. I know that they're dealing with quite a few injuries, especially with Justin Steele now being on the injured list. That's relatively rough, to say the least, but I do think that for the Texas Rangers, they do find a way to be able to get the job done. I do think that this is going to be a game where we do see some scoring, but once again, I do think that the Rangers bullpen is a little bit more fortified, and this is a Cubs team that they don't necessarily rip the cover off the ball, so I did set my total at 9.2. I think that there's upside with Jordan Wicks as well. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to roll with the Rangers, set them as a minus 136 favorite, and that'll wrap things up for the Sunday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family podcast. A big thanks to Justin Perri over at Chalk Valley Bets, along with Pitchers List, for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season. That means I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.